What year were you born?
I was born in 1948
And where?
in Fayetteville, Fayetteville, Tennessee.
Okay. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
What was your neighborhood like as a kid?
Well, I lived in a small town. Shelbyville was a small town, and it was a very nice town. It was a great place for a kid to grow up. There was a river that ran right through town, and as you know, I like fishing, so I was on the river a lot, and I had a paper route. I delivered papers from my bicycle, and I walked to school all the time with the other kids, and it was a nice place.
Okay. And what was school like when you were a kid, and what challenges did you face?
Well, school is different now, I think, more than anything from the discipline aspect. When I went to school, there was much more respect for the teachers. And if you did not respect the teacher, if you talked back or something like that, you were disciplined. Sometimes you got a paddling from the principal or from one of the men teachers. And that was a big difference. And there was not... I never heard of marijuana. There was no kind of drugs at all when I went to school. That probably was the biggest difference. It was just a different time for our country and for people. It was just a different time.
Okay, and what was the first job you had, and what was it like?
The first job I had was working in a fruit stand that sold corn and melons and that kind of thing. And what I did, I bagged up the corn for the people and put ice on the corn and took it out to their car for them and that kind of thing. And that led to the career that I've had all my life. I've been in the produce business, for, I think about 50 years. So, and it all started back at the fruit stands.
Uh-huh. And what were your teenage years like?
My teenage years, I would have to say, were difficult. We moved from Tennessee to California when I was 15. So I left all my friends and my school, and the culture in Tennessee and California is really different. It was like moving to another country. So for a teenage boy for a couple of years, it was a very difficult time for me.
Okay, and how did you meet your spouse?
How did I meet my spouse? My spouse came to visit the next door neighbor to spend the summer with her, and I met her there. And then my present spouse, Annette, I was back in Tennessee visiting an aunt, and I met Annette there.
What major wars or conflicts do you remember?
I remember Vietnam very well. I was at the age that I would have went to Vietnam had I not have been married. They had the draft system at that time, but I wasn't drafted because I was married and had one child. And so naturally, I remember that well. I remember, of course, the Iraq War, and really that's the wars that I know.
What do you remember about them, and how did you feel about them?
Well, Vietnam War, I grew up, like I said earlier in our interview, with respect for those in authority. So the government said we should be in that war, so I just made the assumption that we should have been there. But looking back, I think that war was a mistake, and really we had no business in that war.
And what major historical events have you lived through, and what do you remember about them?
Probably the biggest event I lived through was the assassination of John Kennedy. And I was at home listening to the radio. I was just a teenage boy. And I remember hearing the details of the president being shot. That's probably the biggest historic event I remember. And then the next would be the Watts riot in Los Angeles. I remember that vividly. And those are probably the two tragic events that I remember.
What jobs have you had?
What job have I had? Well, I was a produce clerk, supervisor, and buyer for Ralph's Grocery. And then from there, I was part owner in two markets. And then from there, I've been in the wholesale side of the produce business the rest of my life.
And what did these jobs teach you?
Well, they taught me business practices. All these jobs, I was in management position, and so I learned business.
Is there anything that you wish you had done differently in life, and why?
I think probably the only thing I would have done different would have been more aggressive in business. Maybe I've been a little too conservative. I probably would have taken more chances.
How has America changed in your lifetime?
Well, America's changed tremendously in my lifetime. I think the largest thing in America is the morality of the country has really gone down over my lifetime. Our morals are terrible now, compared especially from when I was a boy and a teenager.
And how has the world changed in your lifetime?
I think the biggest thing I see with the world is it's connected more with other countries. All the countries are interconnected now. With the travel, with air, I think has made that possible. And then with our trade, when we trade goods between us and our economic systems, that's the largest thing I see.
And what advice do you have for me and the people in my generation?
I think for all people, I think to look at your values, what kind of person you are, and you need an anchor, some kind of guide to guide you in life. And from my point of view, the Bible, Christianity is the way to do that. I think to be the right kind of person is the most important thing in life.